Hi everyone, welcome to a very special episode of Ask an Engineer, where we have props and camera angles and stuff. Today I'm going to show you everything you need to get started recording and producing music. So if you like these videos and you want us to keep making them and adding even more props and even more camera angles, then please don't forget to like and subscribe below. So one of the more frequent questions we get asked is some variation on how do I get started, what do I need to get started, just making, producing, recording music. So hopefully this video will, if not narrow down your choices, at least inform you a little bit more about how to make a better choice. So the first thing you would need is some form of computer. So pretty much any modern computer, any computer that you probably have is good enough, powerful enough to at least get started, doing all the stuff we're going to talk about today. So the next thing you need to look at is the actual software that we're going to use for recording. And these are what are called digital audio workstations, or DAWs. Some people pronounce it DAW. There's an online debate about DAW or DAW. Say whichever one you want. Those are pretty much like essentially one-stop shops. They're an all-in-one recording solution. They come with the ability to record audio, mix it. They often come with instruments, some complement of what are called virtual instruments and effects. Now, which DAW to get? There's a bunch of different manufacturers. So no matter which DAW you end up choosing, it's going to come with some way of actually making sound. So they'll come with some complement of loops, or what are called virtual instruments, which are, we call them plugins. Any instrument, from a piano to a drum kit to a modular synthesizer to a nickel harpa, like anything you can imagine, it'll come in one of these virtual instruments. So once you figured out how to actually make the sounds, you're going to need to actually hear the sounds that you're making. So that would necessitate getting something called an audio interface, which is, some sort of peripheral, something that plugs into your computer and just handles getting all the audio into and out of the computer. And I can plug in a pair of headphones. So if you're doing most of your production in the computer using software tools, you just really need some way of monitoring that. But any decent pair of headphones will be fine. They'll give you enough resolution that you'll hear what you need to hear. And also if you're recording with a microphone, mics pick up any sound that's in the room. So if you're listening out of speakers, that sound's going to be picked up as well as the thing you're trying to record, which is far from ideal. So you're going to need headphones if you plan to be tracking with a microphone. So those are pretty much the most basic things you would need in order to record and produce music. Computer, DAW, and some way of listening to the results that you're making. So if you're using virtual instruments and all you're doing is operating within the DAW, the next step over from that would be to get some form of controller. The vast majority are piano controllers, but you also have ones for drums with drum pads. If you play saxophone, you got wind controllers. It's a way of kind of extending the functionality of the DAW into the actual physical world, which is a way of manipulating and expressing themselves that most people are more comfortable with, rather than endless menu diving and mouse clicking. As far as controllers are concerned, you've got little 1-2 octave ones that are super portable, USB powered, so you don't have to bring a power supply, right up to larger ones like this, all the way up to full 88 key weighted keys if you're coming from playing an acoustic piano. Pretty much there's something for everyone. If you are planning to get a controller, if that's something that appeals to you, shop around, because capitalism being what it is, in order to compete with each other, various manufacturers include little bundles of software. So if you're getting started and you're looking for kind of an all-in-one package, a lot of controllers will come with cut-down versions of DAWs, some basic instruments to start with. So you might be able to just get the whole thing in one fell swoop. So far we've just been talking about making music completely in the computer using software tools. What happens if you want to record an instrument that you own, an acoustic guitar, your voice, a drum kit? You're going to need some kind of microphone and some way of hooking it up to get the signal from that microphone into the computer. So basically we have two types of microphones that you'll consider. You have a dynamic microphone. This is a very standard, probably the most standard microphone, is the Shure SM57. And here is a condenser mic. Dynamic microphones, super rugged. Once you no longer need the microphone, it can double as a hammer. So you got a twofer there. But what's nice about them is they're not very sensitive. So that sounds like a bad thing, but it can actually be a really good thing if you're recording in a room that's quite reverberant and you don't have a lot of acoustic treatment. Using a dynamic mic can kind of help cut down on how much ambience gets into the signal. They're also great on louder sources, snare drums, guitar cabinets, things like that. Condenser mic, on the other hand, is a little bit more hi-fi sounding. It's got more highs, more lows, sounds a bit more even. So it's great to pick up anything where you want detail, like a voice, an acoustic guitar, things like that. So that brings us back to our old friend, the interface. Pretty much any interface has a couple of microphone preamps, like 1, 2, all the way up to 8 or 16 microphone preamps built into it. A microphone preamp is kind of a specialized amplifier because microphones put out a very low level signal and you need something to kind of boost it up in level before recording it. And these preamps have what's called phantom power, which is indicated by a little 48 volt icon. So you need that to actually power the internal circuitry in a condenser microphone. Dynamic mics don't need phantom power, so you can just plug them straight in. Condenser mics, just keep in mind, once you plug them in, you literally just have to flick a switch to send power to the mic. So just keep in mind, if you are going to use microphones, you need a few other things, namely an XLR cable to connect it. And then unless you want to, hold the microphone while you're trying to play, you'll need some kind of microphone stand. So there is one other way of getting signal into the computer. If you've got anything that uses a pickup, so an electric guitar, electric bass, if you're lucky enough to have a Rhodes keyboard, you can use what's called a DI, or direct injection. So you just need a basic instrument cable. Most interfaces, not every interface, but most interfaces will come with some DI in the front. Sometimes it's called a high Z input, which is a high impedance, which is what your guitar wants to see. We won't go into that. But you just plug straight into that. It'll just take the signal directly from your guitar. And then once that signal is in the computer, you have what are called like amplifier simulators. You have all kinds of software solutions to make it sound more like a mic'd up guitar cabinet. So now that we know basically what we actually need to record, let's explore the fun part, which is actually using them to record some music. In here, I have PreSonus Studio One. That's the DAW that I use. Every DAW will be able to do the same thing. You just might have to look in a different menu to get it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import a drum loop directly into Studio One. I'm happy with that. I want it a little bit longer than the way it is, so I'm just going to duplicate that. So now that my drums are set up, I'm going to want to add something that'll like sort of establish the harmony. So that way I can start layering, cool things on top. Given that the drums sort of have a slow, lo-fi kind of chill thing going on, I'm going to go for a Rhodes, nice Rhodes keyboard. Just open up the instruments. I'm going to add an instrument, which in Studio One, it's called Presence. It's its basic sampler program. But like I said, every DAW comes with some sort of sampler option. Clean Rhodes. That sounds good to me. So as you notice, I can play it just by clicking on it with the mouse, but that's a horrible way to play things. So I'm going to want to use the controller. I do that right here. Choose my Control 49. And there we go. Getting sound. Now, just a quick note, when you record from controllers and they're triggering sounds in the computer, you're actually not recording the audio with the controller. You're recording what's called MIDI. Essentially, it's everything about the performance except the actual sound of the performance. So as I play the keyboard, it'll record all the notes, how hard I hit them, how long I hold them down, when I release them, all that kind of stuff. All that information gets recorded into the DAW, and I use that to trigger the sounds back, which means later on, if I want to change the key of the song, if I want to change the tempo of the song, or if I want to change the actual sound I'm using, I can do that no problem. All it does is shift that information and trigger a whole new set of sounds. I need to set a little click track and some sort of pre-count, so that it doesn't start recording right away before I have a chance to actually get my hands ready on the instrument and start playing. So this is going to give me a little 2-bar count in, which gives me time to sort of feel the tempo and know when to come in. So here we go. So I've got my drums, I've got my keyboard. I think what the track needs now is some bass. Everything needs some bass. So for that, I'm going to use the DI input on the interface. We're just going to go straight in, and then we'll take it from there. We'll see if maybe I need to change the sound in some way, shape, or form. Okay, I'm getting sound. I'm getting a decent level. Yeah, minus 12. You know, to me, that's a good peak. It's not actually going yellow or red at any point. If I, play the loudest note there, it's still within safe margins. Yeah, that's just one thing to watch out for. If you're recording in, whether it be DI or microphone, just make sure that you set the gains on your interface so that the signal you're recording is loud enough that it's, it's not gonna be swamped by a noise floor, but it's low enough that you're not gonna risk clipping. And the best thing to have someone do is play the loudest part that they're gonna play. Like if you're playing bass here, just... And set the gains conservatively so that at that loudest part, you've still got some headroom. Minus 12, in my opinion, is a pretty good target to aim for. So we're ready to go. I think the next thing I want to add is like a spaghetti western guitar. I could just DI that like I DI'd the bass and add effects later, but I sort of want to have the effects on the guitar to get the feel of it as I'm playing. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the guitar through some pedals into an amplifier and mic the amplifier. As for miking up the amplifier, I just kind of stuck a microphone in front of it. When in doubt, that's a pretty good rule. Stick the microphone in front of the thing you're trying to record. But be aware that there's a whole science and skill set behind miking up instruments to get the best sound out of them. So if that's, kind of a path you want to go down, there's a bunch of things to go explore online. Instead of coming in the DI, I'm coming in the microphone preamp, but it's the same idea. I've got a gain knob, and I'm just going to set it so that we're getting, around minus 12 peaks in the DAW. So we're done recording all the parts. What I've done is I've gone into each part that I tracked and found sort of the best bit of the performance, chop that out and loop that so that, everything's in time, everything sits well with the track. And now we're just going to look at a little bit of the mixing functionality that you can do. It's one thing to just record everything, but they don't always sit together as well as you'd like. So there's things you can do, effects you can add, just little nips and tucks you can do to kind of make everything sit a little bit better and feel more like a finished track. I've got everything sounding the way I want it, but you'll notice a few things have changed. I've got my faders at different levels here. I've got these guys, which are panning controls. I also have a couple of effects. So I'm going to turn those off to begin with. We're just going to listen to the raw tracking, and then I'll bring the effects in and sort of explain why I did what I did and how I think it helps the track. So the first thing I think I want to do, the Rhodes and the drums to me sound a little bit dry, a little bit too forward. So I just want to give them a little bit of space and ambience. And to do that, I'm going to send them to a reverb. Now, how I do that is what's called an aux send. It essentially takes a split from the channel. So you have your regular channel, whatever you've recorded gets to your master bus, which you can hear on your headphones. But a send will kind of tap off of that and send it to another destination. And usually we use that stuff to process parallel effects. Reverb is like probably the most common use case for that. So what you're doing is you're not actually replacing the signal with the reverb signal. You're sending the signal out to a reverb, which you then blend back in with the dry signal. You know, it's extending the snare a little bit. Things sound a little bit less dry to me. The Rhodes still sounds a bit heavy. It's like it's sitting on top of the track. There's a bit of bloat there that I don't like. So what I've done is I've added an EQ. You know, I know these are just knobs. They don't really show you that much, but I'm kind of cutting some lows, cutting some highs, and boosting the mid-range so that the Rhodes has a little bit more of a space of its own, right in the middle of the mix, rather than kind of flumping all over everything. You know, still sounds like a Rhodes, but if I turn it off, all that low end is just, I don't like it. There. That sounds like how I want a Rhodes to sound. You know, I haven't done a whole lot to the guitar. We ran through effects on the way in. That's kind of one of the benefits of actually processing a signal as you record it. So you don't have to do a lot to it once it's in the track. And then for the bass, I have some plugins on there. DI'd bass to me just always sounds a little bit anemic. It sounds like you plugged something directly into something. You know, there's not a lot of space around it or warmth or air. Like DIs are a great way to get a really clean signal into the DAW. But once it's in there, I find I usually want to dirty it up a little bit and give it some character. So what I've done here is I've put on saturation plugin. It's a model of an actual bass DI, but a tube DI, so you can kind of drive it a little bit and get some grit. Some compression and some EQ. So let's listen to the track with the bass dry, and then I'll kick on the effects and listen for the change. So there's a little bit of louder is better. You know, I'm getting some more volume out of the plugins, which obviously I could compensate for with a fader if I wanted to. But even with that volume jump, sort of the bass just has a lot more like body and presence, and it sounds like kind of how I want a bass to sound. So now I've tracked all my parts, I've edited them, gotten the best of the performance that I want to keep, and I've done some mixing to sort of get everything to sit together and improve the sound or enhance the sound a little bit. You'll notice as I play the track, my master bus here is peaking around -12, the same way we wanted our recorded input to peak at -12. This is called gain staging. So pretty much at every stage of the process, you want to watch where your peaks are, because as you start to add more tracks, as you start to use effects, I mean, just listen to how the bass jumped up in level when I started adding some effects. You want to make sure that you're sort of regulating that gain. So as signals accumulate, you're not going to run into that clipping problem that we talked about, which you'll hear is distortion and unpleasant artifacts. So the next step is, you know, if I want to go and listen to this in my car, on my phone, send it to a friend, publish it, whatever, wherever on the internet, I have to bounce it down. I have to actually like take all these separate tracks and blend them into one single stereo file. So I just go into the menu. I'm just going to go export mixdown. I'm going to name the file. So I've recorded everything at 24 bits and 44.1 kilohertz as a sample rate. And I'm going to export between my loop markers. Everything should be good. And here's the file, which I can just, there we go. That sounds like my song. Great. So now I've got an actual finished piece of music that I can go show my friends, show my mom. She'll be so proud of me. So hopefully this video, you know, recording, making music, producing music is just a huge world that once you enter into, there's always something new to learn. We can't even hope to cover even a small fraction of what is possible in just this one video. Hopefully we've helped you get to the point where you can take an idea you've got in your head and actualize it into a finished piece of music that then you can, you know, present to the world. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more of them, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And feel free to leave any questions you have in the comment section below.